Okay, great. It looks like we have a good amount of participants rolling in. We're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody to an Optimity Advisors webinar, The Missing Piece, where data fits within your people, process, and technology. My name is Ryan Murphy, and I'm joined today by John Horodyski, who's a managing director at Optimity. John, are you there?
I am. Good morning, good afternoon, and good day, everyone. Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome. So we're just going to start off by giving you all of the background about Optimity, background about John and myself, and then we'll get into the agenda and talk about where data fits in within the classic people, process, and technology. So John, I'll have you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ryan. Optimity Advisors, we are a global innovation consultancy, and we do help the world's most influential brands discover, build, and launch human-centered strategies and solutions that embrace the complexities of our digital world. We are centered in across the United States in Los Angeles, Minneapolis, Washington, D.C., New York, and our clients are from a lot of industries, including consumer brands, pharmaceutical, media entertainment, insurance, a lot of industries that are looking for solutions for their content management and content strategy ideas. And a little bit more information about our team here. So Ryan and I are from the information management team at Optimity Advisors, and we're all about data-driven competitive advantage. So we work with our clients on a variety of programs such as digital asset management, MarTech, metadata and taxonomy, governance, all those good things that help you transform your information in the world in which we live in today. And today's topic will be focusing on that of data. We do have other topics that we have done in the past, and we'd be more than happy to share those webinar links with you at your discretion. So then let's talk a little bit about ourselves. So I will, that's me at the top there. That's John Horodyski. I'm a managing director here at Optimity Advisors. I've been doing this type of work for over 20 years now in terms of digital asset management, content strategy, metadata and taxonomy, MarTech, all those good things around content. Started my career at Electronic Arts and then have now pursued into the consulting space where I have been ever since. And very fortunate to have worked with some great clients from Fortune 10, 50 and upwards. I'm also a adjunct faculty at San Jose State University, where I teach a graduate course in digital asset management. Very happy I've been doing that for almost 15 years now. I do regularly column work for CMS Wire magazine, speak a lot at conferences around the world on things like digital asset management and metadata, and had a book published a few years ago about those topics as well. And I'm very excited to be a part of this webinar with my good esteemed colleague, Ryan Murphy. Take it away, Ryan.
Thanks, John. Like John said, my name's Ryan Murphy. I'm a manager here at Optimity Advisors. Originally come from the financial services industry with a background in financial analytics. Moved into Optimity and got involved with the information management team. Now focused more on the digital asset management and information management side of things. All things surrounding DAM, metadata, workflow, project management, and all that good stuff. So let's get into today's agenda.
All right, so what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about what is data. I think it's always good to start any of these types of discussion with foundational material, and you want to understand what we are talking about. So we're going to take some time to explain the complexities and the fun, good things about data. We're then going to talk about a data foundation and why that is so important to have that in your organization on any initiative you may want to be doing. And then we're going to talk about the value what data enables and what you can start doing for your organization, what can be done with it. And then obviously we need to sort of say how do we get started? What are those steps to do? So we're going to take some time to talk through what are some things that you can do today, some actionable items that you can get forward. And then we're going to have a Q&A. So at any point during today's webinar, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring those. And at the end, we'll have hopefully a very robust Q&A section. Love to hear all your questions as we go along. Awesome. All right, then let's kick it off. So this is the slide. Let's talk about this. This is the one we're going to see a few times today because it's that important. And what is this slide about? Well, we're saying to you that data is the foundation. Why is it the foundation? Well, quite simply, without data, you have nothing. Data makes everything easier. Every technology implementation needs to start with good data. And without good data, technology starts to decrease efficiency in an organization because quality information that supports operations cannot be extracted by disorganized data sources. So you want to be organized here. And as organizations grow in size, evolve, and take on additional market opportunities, change will be the constant for the people, process, and technology supporting your business. So you need to start with a data foundation. And as you can see on the pyramid, data supports it all: the technology, the process, and the people. Your technology amplifies your business operations, so you make sure that your data is solid, it is qualified, and it always has integrity. Your processes must be exact and ready to fulfill your business goals, and they must be purposeful for your business. And your technology is there to help, not hinder the process. And lastly, your people. They're the ones that are creating the data, they're the ones that are using it, and you want quality data for your customers. This is key to a user-centric approach, not complicated and not ineffective. Remember, your data supports your technology, the technology supports your process and people in the organization, and ultimately your customers. This is why it is so important. So let's take some time and look at what the data is. But first, I think this is a good time to do a poll. We are big fans of doing live poll questions in our webinars. So let's do our first poll of the day. Next slide.
Awesome. So I'm launching a poll now. You should all see it within your Zoom screens pop up. If you're full screen, you might just have to close out of a full screen, but awesome. I'm seeing the results coming in already. That's great.
There it is. So do you have a data strategy in place? Yes or no? Simple question-ish. Yeses or nos. Ryan, I think I know what the answer might be. Do you have a good feeling?
It's well, I'm biased because I'm seeing it coming live. We're split almost directly down the middle here. We'll give it a couple of other seconds for the answers to come in.
Okay, I'm hoping the answer will be the answer I'm hoping it'll be. If not, this is good. This is why we do these webinars. This is why we talk about these types of issues. So,
awesome.
All right.
I'm going to share the results here. This poll. We're actually split directly down the middle.
Whoa! Well, first of all, thank you for those who participated in the poll, because we do enjoy having the live interaction. That is literally split down the middle. Okay. Well, here we go. For those of you who do have one, well done you. For those of you who don't, let's talk about it. Let's figure out what you certainly need to get going for a policy. That's great. This is good. Thank you. All right, let's talk about what is data. So yeah, exactly what is data anyway? Well, quite simply, it is defined as, it's a collection of observations, characteristics, even descriptions about one or many objects, persons, processes, or even companies. It's something we use every day in our personal life and in our business affairs, and we need to understand it a little bit more. But data is not just data. After all, it is actually quite a little bit more. In fact, we have both structured and unstructured data, two very different things. So structured data, what you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen there, well, those are identifiable pieces of data, such as your name, your address, location, those types of tangible items. These are all found in things like in database fields, and they're very much structured for use. They are easily recorded in spreadsheets, even in a database format. They're highly organized, and they're ready for access, your analysis, and even visualization. However, on the left-hand side of the screen, you're seeing something known as unstructured data. And this is something quite different. It does not have the same structure of a database or other type of content system. It may be such things as an image, a video, a text file, a social media communication. All good content, all excellent content to have, but it's missing the structure that is needed in order for it to be easily found via traditional query and search methods. The problem is that businesses are full of unstructured data. Content is often produced without any metadata to search and categorize by, creating a volume, a library of files that cannot really be properly utilized. And an intelligent and robust metadata model or data dictionary can provide that reference for your work, to provide what I call an acquire within upon everything for your business to search. It is concerning to note that 80% of the world's data is in fact unstructured. Now that's a lot of unstructured data that is uncharted and ready to be better understood. Good news is robots are very good at things that are structured, which is a great tip of the hat to the power of such things as artificial intelligence and machine learning. But in order to do any of those good things, you really do need the data foundation, a clean house upon which to start. So then let's take a look a little bit more about some of the keywords that I had mentioned there in terms of metadata. So what is metadata? Well, quite simply, the simple definition is data about data, but it actually is quite a little bit more than just that. It refers to all those descriptive elements that define and describe an asset. Obviously, metadata matters, and it is so important that we know it. It impacts our personal and business data, and yet in some ways it still is quite mysterious for some, and it really should be more understood within organizations. Metadata may be broken down into three main categories. These are coming from NISO, the National Institute of Standards Organization, and that is descriptive, structural, and administrative. Your descriptive metadata are all those things that we sort of just mentioned there in terms of like your name, your location. These are all the subject sort of descriptive terms that you would want to provide about whatever you're describing. Now, the structural, or sometimes known as a technical metadata piece, now that's things like your file formats, your dimensions, the file length, the size, how long is the video you're watching. Those are the really good pieces of information that is very valuable for others when you're searching and looking for pieces of information and data and assets and all those good things. And then lastly, the administrative data. Well, that's really providing information that helps you manage an asset. Usually you see that involving two key elements. That's usually rights management metadata. Those are things that are dealing with intellectual property, licensing concerns, the what you can and what you cannot do with your assets. And then lastly, preservation metadata. Now, these are all the good pieces of data that are all about archival and preservation of assets. The key thing with metadata, though, is that it is a strategic imperative in all your endeavors to manage and exploit your company's data, content, and knowledge more effectively. Any content related strategy for data, digital assets, or text, it needs that holistic metadata schema that is supported by, as we've been saying here, technology, people, and process. Metadata can increase the ROI, or the return on investment, of your content systems because it unlocks the potential to not only ingest, but to discover, share, and distribute your assets. And that's why it's so important. So let's take a fun example. Just we're big believers in good examples here of what metadata in action. So hopefully everyone recognizes the gentleman on the left. But in this image, here we go. We have the brand. What is the brand? Well, the brand is Air Jordan. The campaign for this was actually referred to as the Best on Earth campaign. The type, this is a print collateral piece. There are many, many more you could add within that descriptive category. The structural metadata for this, it is a JPEG. That's the format. It's half a megabyte in size. Again, more things you could add here. And then some administrative metadata in this. Yes, the athlete, proper name, Michael Jordan. There could be alternate names as well. The expiration data, 12/31/1985, shows a little bit of its age. And yes, it's renewable. This can be used over again. So these are, again, just some examples of what it looks like to have some metadata in action. I guess the question I would love to pose to you on the call today, on the webinar, is how well do you know your assets and how well do you know your data to describe what you have? And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ryan.
Awesome. Thank you, John. So that was great. John laid down the basics to talk about what is data and what is a data foundation. Now we're going to get into where data fits in within people, process, technology, and talk about how you can build your data foundation at your organization. So just to revisit this slide again, John, myself, and our team here at Optimity are big believers that data should come before the technology, the process, and the people when you're thinking about a technology implementation. So the reason we called it the missing piece is when we work with organizations, it's very easy for people to gravitate towards the people, process, and technology when they're thinking about an implementation. And they take the data side for granted. But any technology that you're implementing at your organization is going to result in a lot of very valuable data that you'll be able to act upon and increase and amplify your business operations and ultimately make life easier on your people. So we're big believers of making data do the work for you and not you having to work with your data to get the results that you want. So I just wanted to revisit this slide to show that, the reason we put data first and have it in kind of a different order than the traditional PPT is because we think that your data and your data strategy should come before selecting any technology, and any technology should ultimately amplify your business operations and not get in the way. I think we probably all have experiences where new technology is introduced and you lose a lot of great features of old technology you used, or lose pieces of your process that you've enjoyed or has been efficient in the past, just because this technology has been now thrown into your day-to-day usage. And ultimately, data, technology, and process should really build up, the way your people use and support each other and support your business operations on a day-to-day. So in looking at that, talking about what a data foundation looks like. So when we say data foundation, a few synonyms that may be more relevant to the way you use them in your organization are things like a corporate taxonomy, or a metadata model, master data management. We use data foundation because we like the word foundation because it kind of can spread across your whole organization. So the first piece of our data foundation is that it's cross-functional. So it takes multiple business processes and teams into account, and the data overlaps across teams when relevant and siloed when necessary. So this is really important because, again, during any good technology implementation, people should be able to easily see where this technology directly impacts, but also where the technology indirectly impacts. So for example, when you're standing up a digital asset management software within your marketing organization, it doesn't just impact your creative designers or your marketing team. It's also going to impact your social team, your e-commerce team, all the different people who need access to your marketing content in your DAM. So oftentimes when we see technology stood up, there is a core team from one business process or silo that creates the data that's going to belong to that system. And as that dam starts to grow, or whatever technology starts to grow within the organization, new data is coming in that overlaps and does not communicate well with each other, because two teams aren't speaking the same language. And we'll give you a good client example in a little bit, of where we've seen that happen in the real world. But talking about the way that data should be speaking the same language is that your data foundation needs to be consistent. And this means that across teams, everybody's referring to the same piece of data or the same piece of information in the same language. So we're not just talking, if you're crossing international borders and everybody's speaking different languages. We mean calling things like print collateral, or e-commerce or social ads, making sure that you're using the same language, and different teams or different creators aren't using shorthand or different ways to describe the data, because ultimately, without those controlled vocabularies, that's going to hinder your searchability. That's going to hinder the way that those pieces of data impact downstream systems. And without speaking the same language, you're just asking for inconsistencies and inefficiencies in your processes. And finally, a data foundation needs to be enforced. And John's going to talk about what a good cross-functional governance team looks like. But again, you'll see the word here, cross-functional. So a data governance team is the team that needs to be empowered to set standard operating procedures for data entry and tracking. And again, this team should come from anybody that is impacted by the technology you're implementing. So obviously, there's a lot of different stakeholders when you're implementing technology, with your power users and then your indirect stakeholders. But anybody that's impacted by the technology in a major way should be a part of this governance team, so that they have a say in the data that's going in and out of this system, and they know how it's going to impact their day-to-day processes. So in terms of building the foundation, people, process, and technology play a huge part in building the foundation itself. So there's there's kind of the qualitative side of data when you're talking with people, right? So you want to know, how do your employees naturally classify things? So have those stakeholder interviews, start to talk with your people in their day-to-day operations, and understand just how they talk about what they do and how they interact with each other. Also, what data are they missing in their day-to-day? I think, like I said, a lot of people just kind of take data for granted and expect the data to be at their fingertips. And when you stand up technology, that data can easily kind of disappear or not be there, or it's hard to find for your people. So what do they think they're missing? And then understanding, does my technology currently supply that information and it's just not available to my people in an easy manner? Or is that data not there and something that we need to go track down and find within our organization? Now, when you talk about process, I think you can start looking at your different business processes, and again, finding those overlaps. So understanding what processes require the same data, Again, so I'm just going to use DAM as an example, but the work in progress assets obviously need to know the campaign name of an asset, maybe the talent that they're working with. And as that moves through to your social team who's distributing the assets, they're going to need to know a lot of that same data, but the social team also needs to know their own marketing calendar, understanding what platforms they're putting this campaign out to, and all that kind of stuff. So you can start identifying overlaps, as well as siloed data that each team needs respectively. And then how does data flow between systems? So again, if you have your creators and your marketing team who's putting together a campaign entering the data once, that data should naturally flow to anybody downstream in the distribution process, so that data doesn't need to be entered again manually by your teammates. If it exists in one technology, it should integrate and flow to another one seamlessly. And that goes back to just having consistent data that all speaks the same language. If those two systems know that you're talking about campaign names or campaign information from one system to another, whatever technology you're using, that data should be able to flow between systems. And then obviously it all comes back to technology here. So, being able to analyze the current structured data and outputs from your technology systems. So a lot of the technology that you have today, there's probably CSV outputs of the data that's available. So that's a great place to start in understanding, what is currently available from your technology. Look for data virtualization opportunities to remove double data entry. So data virtualization is just a term that basically means taking data from one source or one system and pushing it to another, so that it doesn't necessarily exist in two different technology systems, but that information is now available at the fingertips of anybody using that secondary system. So again, it's not double storing the data. It's just making the data available from one technology viewable and visible through another technology's lens. And then what data is mutable versus immutable in the technology system? So there's always going to be data that you cannot change in a technology system. And then there's going to be data that you can add or change the way that you refer to it. So it's always good to know what's immutable in the technology system, to know that those are not your flexible pieces of data, and not waste time trying to work with the technology vendors to change the way that they classify their whole system. Those are the things you're going to have to build upon. And then you can focus your time on the mutable or the changeable data that exists within the technology. So in terms of data capability maturity, we boil it down to three main steps here. The first is that data assessment. So that's looking at your current state data and your workflow, understanding where your data currently exists. That's looking at your immutable versus mutable data again, and just seeing and taking a landscape, not only for technology that impacts you directly, but again indirectly, and trying to look at the corporation as a whole to understand where your data sits. Once you establish that baseline, you can start working on your metadata and your taxonomy. So this is where you'll start building on your data foundation. This is where you'll establish that language across your entire corporation, so everybody's using the same data. And you can start building those efficiencies, making sure that data flows from the beginning of a process to the end without any manual double entry or anything like that. And then finally, there's data governance, which again, John will touch on more. But once you have your data foundation in place, the most important thing is that you enforce it and make sure that people are following the standard operating procedures in terms of keeping that data in good shape, so that it is still usable and is always reliable throughout your business processes. I'll take a quick pause there. So these here are just some questions for your data. So we've talked about what a data foundation looks like and how to build it. These are where we always start when we're talking about building a data foundation. It's kind of the who, what, where of your data. And it really just sets the baseline again of doing your data assessment. And it's a great place to start, so you know where you stand today, and you're able to take the leap to that next level of the data maturity. So just asking, what is your data? So what is the actual information that you have? Again, structured versus unstructured, mutable versus immutable, all that kind of good stuff. Asking, where is your data? So keeping track of where certain data is physically stored, as well as which systems are where the data is being input. So again, this leads to some great opportunities for things like data virtualization, as well as integration. So you understand where that data is first being input, and you can eliminate double entries, further down the process. Always ask what you're trying to do with your data. So we'll talk about, what data enables a little bit in a second here, but always have an end goal for what your data endeavor is, whether it's descriptive analytics and creating dashboards, or even further down the road, creating AI and machine learning tools, or even if it's just to, cover your back on all things legal and making sure that your rights management is in place as well. And then asking how you're able to access your data, where will it come from, what will it look like, how are you going to distribute that data to everyone to make sure it's at their fingertips as well, and what kind of data cleansing needs to occur. So how are you able to use your data in its current state, and is there any data cleansing that needs to happen for you to use it in the future? So like I said, this is a great place to start for that data assessment we talked about. And these are just 5 kind of key, the who, what, when, and how of your data. So we have another poll here that we're going to put out before we get into the enablement of data and what it can do for you. So I'm going to share that with everybody now and give everybody a minute to respond here.
I think I know what the answer might be. I'm hoping what I think the answer might be. These are all good things: descriptive analytics, diagnostic, process optimization, predictive analytics, machine learning, AI. I think I know how I would answer.
Yep, they're coming in now.
Oh, here we come. There they go.
Give everybody a few more seconds here to answer.
Each of those, all very good topics, right?
Mm-hmm.
All good things that we should be considering or thinking about, but be curious to see what the results show. Of
course. All right, I'm going to close the poll. Again, thank you all for participating. Really helps us kind of understand the lens in which to speak through. So I'm going to share the results here, and I think in no surprise, we see this in a lot of organizations. All of the above is the answer, with descriptive analytics and process optimization and data flow being the second 2 kind of focus areas.
Those are good answers. I was expecting all of the above, but it's nice to see descriptive and process come up. That's great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for participating. This is very helpful. Oh, excellent.
Awesome. So next we're going to get into what data enables and talk about a real world example we've seen with one of our clients. And then John will get into, again, some, like step 1, 2, 3 of building your data foundation. So in terms of what data can enable, this is a pretty famous thought piece here, but it kind of relates the difficulty, the value, and also relates to the data maturity of an organization as well. So what this graph is explaining here is that, these are the different steps that you need to take in order to get to more advanced analytics that will give you more value for your organization. So if you look down at the bottom left here, you'll see aligned data, and that is your data foundation, right? So although it says the difficulty is low, you can kind of put everything else in perspective there, because we're talking about a data foundation and first getting your data in order, because you first have to set that data foundation in order to truly realize the value of these next stages of data analytics and maturity. So the next stage here is descriptive analytics. This is saying what has happened. So these are your traditional dashboards. These are, the ones that can kind of run diagnostics on what's going on, but not necessarily tell you why anything happened. It just gives you kind of the KPIs and the outputs. And then the next phase of descriptive analytics is those diagnostic analytics. So we'll start to show you the trends of why it's happening, the different impacts, the different variables you're looking at, to see, why a certain KPI or key performance indicator has come out the way it has. The next phase is getting into predictive analytics. So this is the one I think everybody's looking for in terms of understanding what will happen, so you can make better business decisions in your future. We all want to see the future, right? So understanding what will happen is the next piece. And then finally, prescriptive analytics. This is where you can come up with a few different scenarios or a few different strategies, run them against your models, and understand how can we make the most favorable outcome happen. So these are all, things that I think every organization is taking very seriously now. In terms of analytics, we know that it can help any business make better business decisions. But we just want to show that, again, it all starts with aligned data or that data foundation. Without a strong data foundation, you won't be able to reach as strong a value of any of these next levels. Again, in certain business styles and certain teams, I think everybody has put together dashboards or diagnostic analytics. But again, we want to make it so that you're not just doing it for your own team, but you're able to, capture information from other teams as well and make better business decisions within your day to day. So let's talk about, a real life example. So we worked with a multinational consumer packaged goods company on a digital asset management implementation. And this client had created a metadata model for their dam, basically in a bubble. So what I mean by that is they only worked with people in creative operations to create their metadata model. So they were only concerned with things like rights management with their talent, their music, their video talent, as well as their working campaign titles, maybe the product in the image, and things like that. But as the dam grew, they didn't really have the foresight to see all the different places that the dam would touch with, including things like, again, their social team, but even with things like their product team and their supply chain team, as people got more involved in the marketing. And the big question was, how can we attribute the revenue coming in to certain campaigns that we're putting out there? So trying to measure the ROI of a certain marketing campaign for a product that they were putting out. So what we were able to do was we were able to come in and say, okay, this is where your dam's at currently. This is everywhere that it's currently interacting with. Let's start future looking and understand who it's going to touch on. And let's start working with your people and understanding what data are they redundantly entering into your dam that could just flow from another system. And I think the most powerful integration that we were able to pull together was that we actually integrated with a PIM, or a product information management system, where they were keeping track of all of their SKUs, all the different shades of the products that they were putting out, and all this different product information that the DAM teams were actually inputting when it involved in their campaign. So what we were able to do was basically make it so that the DAM team was able to enter a SKU into the digital asset management system. And just by entering that SKU, the data that was in the PIM system automatically flowed into the DAM. So again, this is if we were working with, we'll use a tube of lipstick, for example. You just had to use the SKU from the PIM system, and in would come the size of the lipstick, the shade of the lipstick, the brand that it came from. And this was all able to happen because, again, we set that data foundation so that the terms that were used in the DAM were the same terms that were used in the product management system. And we were able to bring that product info, in an automated way right into the DAM. So that got rid of all the double entry. And it just goes to show the power of, setting that data foundation and integrating between systems so that you can eliminate all of that metadata double entry, and make sure that, people are searching in a consistent manner, and you're using the same data that's set at the standard and at the get-go of any business process. So I think next we're going to get into the steps to get started. I just want to remind everyone again, you can drop questions in the Q&A, as well as use the chat as we're going through. There is a Q&A session at the end as well. It looks like we had one question come in, so thank you for that. So I'm going to hand it back over to John, and he's going to talk about the steps to get started with your data foundation.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. So what we've learned with data foundation is we do need to act some actionable items to get going. So let's talk about what are those next steps. So we know that we need the foundation. What exactly do? So step one, and Ryan hinted at this a little bit earlier, let's do a data assessment. So you want to conduct some form of a systematic data assessment that gives you insight and information into where it stands and managing your information a little bit more effectively. It's going to be your first step in creating a roadmap to consolidate data from various systems, to apply consistent metadata and maximize your workflow, security, and your return on investment, your ROI. So let's look at some of the things that you should explore, some of the questions you should consider. Number one, it seems simple enough, but it's actually the hardest question to ask for many organizations. What is your data? Exactly what information is being captured with that data, and what format is it in? Is it accessible? Is it multitude of formats? Uh, what about all that good old data in the archive? Let's consider those types of things with in terms of the what is your data. But then let's think about the where is your data. Where actually is it being stored? Is it stored physically? Is it stored digitally? Is it in one location or multiple locations? Most oftentimes, it's actually in multiple locations. Which teams are responsible for the data storage? Who exactly is managing the data in your organization? Another great question to ask. Number three, how will you access your data? Exactly what are you trying to do with it? How will your data look like? How are you going to distribute that data? What is the end goal for your data endeavor? Is this just for good search, which is always good to have? Is it for analytics? Is this for just good old customer service? Is this for AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning? These are the types of things you need to start considering. And then lastly, number four, how are you able to use this data? What state is it in? Is it authoritative? Is it being managed? What type of data cleansing potentially needs to take place? Think of using standardized terms or a controlled vocabulary. And then what can you do? More importantly, what can you not do with your data? Think of licensing and rights management and compliance issues. So answer these questions and you're sort of beginning to start your journey. Managing data is an opportunity to optimize the content lifecycle, and this assessment is going to start you on your data journey. So it's data assessment step one. Now, step two is something a little bit more specific. Let's talk then about your metadata and your taxonomy. We talked a little bit about this before. So we know that metadata matters. It's not just data about data, but it's going to be the essence of all those amazing things about your creative assets and the content data that you have. So we know that metadata is the descriptive, it is the administrative, and it is the structural or technical depiction of an asset. It's the content that you have. But metadata ensures that you have quality data, and it provides the structure needed to make your content more discoverable and accessible in search, and therefore obviously more valuable to you in what you are trying to do. And this is meaningful data to have. So once you've got your metadata ready to go and you've begun to figure that out, you need some taxonomy. You really do need some taxonomy in your life, let me say. Taxonomy then is just the classification of that data into groups or classes that share similar characteristics, because ultimately you need to organize what you have so you may discover it through search. So having a taxonomy also ensures compliance with your documented and authoritative sources of knowledge. This is a very good thing to have. It also creates the common language and a controlled vocabulary for everyone, so that there is a consistent and a well-controlled way to use and manage your content. And lastly, it brings all your processes into alignment to ensure efficiency. So metadata and taxonomy must consider your people, your process, and your technology in order to get quality data. And this is a critical step in your data maturity, which brings us then to the final step, step three. This is about good governance. Ryan mentioned this before. I've mentioned it as well. Governance is good. The need to manage that data well is going to be with your governance. So governance, in some ways, is best defined as a process or a framework to ensure that program goals are met, both during the technology use now and also for the future. So in many ways, kind of think of governance as an effective form of risk management. Governance is good, and governance is no longer an option. It just has to happen. Governance is not necessarily just a set of rules, but it's also more, think of it as the good practices of organization to allow for careful, and yes, obviously, data-driven decision-making. You can't have data-driven decision-making without good quality data that is being governed. So to be effective, data governance must be considered as truly a holistic corporate objective, going beyond IT governance. It needs to establish policies and procedures and even training for the management of data across your organization at all levels. And that's important there. It's not just for one group, it's for everyone to consider. Without data governance, at best, opportunities to leverage that enterprise data to respond to new opportunities may well be lost. And at worst, Organizations may face the legal consequences of data mismanagement, something that you don't want to do. But what you do want to do is to create that common vision, to understand all the dependencies and impacts. And when possible, you want to automate those things for efficiency. Your data needs governance. So that moves us on to our sort of last slide for us. And this is the takeaway, the statement we would love to have you sort of consider. And that is that, yes, a data strategy does define a foundation of consistent data to build, improve, integrate, and implement a world-class technology. But 3 things to consider here before we go on to the questions and answers. So for the first, remember, data is the foundation for your content and all that you do in business and how you interact with your customers. Number 2, data is intimately associated with business transactions and there in turn those associated actions by people. It demands all of our attention. Data is not just a technical challenge. In fact, the way humans interact with systems and processes must also be considered, as well as good security being designed with people in mind. Lastly, data is in everything that we do, and it deserves our greatest care and responsibility in order to drive everything we will want to do in the future. And with that, Ryan and I will say thank you very much for listening to us for this part of the program where we are doing the talking. That's our information. If you want to get in touch with us for more information. For those attending today, we will be sending out the slides later this week. We'll also have a white paper ready to go as well. We can give you more information if you want to talk more about any of these subjects. And I think the best thing to do now is to open it up for a Q&A. I do see some questions already going in there. So Ryan, should we turn it over to, let's turn it back to you, everyone. Thank you for listening. Now we want to hear more from you.